I am not something you can just throw away, you shouted, voice breaking before it could finish. Then the slap came before the silence did. It cracked through the cramped room and disappeared into walls bloated from years of rain. Damp plaster carried the stale smell of mildew, unwashed clothes, and the kind of neglect that settled into a house so deeply it no longer felt temporary. You stayed where you were. Not because it hurt, because your body had forgotten how to move. Your mother had slapped you before, enough times that your cheek no longer burned as much as your mind instinctively counted what you must have done wrong. A forgotten chore. A few dollars tucked away from the wages you earned after endless shifts. A complaint about the life you had stopped expecting anyone to change. But this time, the sting reached somewhere her hands never had before. Not because she had struck harder, because until today, there had still been something left to protect. A hope. Hope that one day you would leave this crumbling 3-room house behind and belong to a life of pride and dignity. One where people would call you a doctor with quiet admiration. One where your hands would stitch wounds instead of washing the dishes until your fingers cracked. One where you spent your days saving lives instead of wondering why you couldn't seem to save your own. That future had not disappeared all at once. It had been chipped away, piece by piece. Your examination results. Your aunt's promise to help you study in another city. A promise that dissolved into excuses. And now this. A marriage proposal you had never asked for. An older man. A widower with a 1-year-old daughter. The neighborhood whispered that his wife hadn't died by misfortune, but by his hands. Whether it was true, no one seemed to know. Yet no one spoke of him without lowering their voice, because he was wealthy, and that, apparently, was reason enough. It wasn't difficult to guess how this had come about. His mother had seen you serving tables at the cafe, a girl with a father who had long surrendered to gambling and liquor, leaving everything all in the hands of a mother who was desperate enough to say yes before anyone else could. You had never been a bride, only an easy choice, a life to be handed over to a man you didn't know, to a house you had no reason to believe would be any kinder than the one you were already trying to escape. The thoughts wrapped around your chest the way vines swallowed the old walls outside, tightening with every passing moment until your breaths grew shallow. No, you couldn't let your life be handed away as though your dreams had never belonged to you in the first place. Before you could think, your knees struck the floor. Your fingers wrapped around your mother's legs with a desperation that stripped away every last shred of pride. Mother, please, don't do this to me. I'll work harder. I won't complain anymore. I'll do whatever you ask. An anguished cry broke through your throat. Just, please, don't send me away. The next sentence was a whisper struggling its way out through the sobs. I'm scared. You ungrateful brat. She kicked her leg free, forcing your hands to slip away. Mother, I'll become a doctor. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Yeah? She gave a hollow laugh, repeating your own words as though they belonged to someone foolish enough to believe them. That's what you said. Couldn't even clear one damn exam. What were you doing all this time? I was trying. The words scraped against your raw throat. How could I focus only on studying when I worked 3 shifts a day and still came home to cook and clean for... Your cry broke in the middle of the sentence. White-hot pain shot across your scalp as she wrenched your head back. Your breath caught somewhere between your lungs and your throat. Please, you cried. Don't. Shut up, you bitch. She gritted the words out.
Stop pretending you were working your ass off when all you were busy doing was spreading your legs for those men. Your shoulder hit the floor with a force that sent a sharp ache racing across your back. Your arms flew out behind you, catching your weight before your head could strike the ground. Better to mirror you off to some old man than keep listening to those women laugh at me. She turned her back without waiting for an answer. The sound of the old oak door slammed shut made you flinch. You stayed where you had fallen. That accusation had stopped being new a long time ago. In the beginning, you had defended yourself. You explained every late shift, every customer who lingered a little too long at the cafe, every rumor that somehow found its way home before you did. You answered every question she threw at you, hoping that if you could just explain yourself well enough, she would finally believe you. She never did. And then, somewhere along the way, you stopped trying. No amount of honesty can survive in a place where the verdict has already been decided.
Before, you used to wonder what had hollowed your mother into someone who looked at her own daughter with so much resentment. Poverty? Regret? The bottle she reached for more often than she reached for you? But now, you no longer searched for an answer. Some questions lost their meaning when they never changed the ending. You drew your knees to your chest, resting your forehead against them as your shoulders trembled. For a long while, you simply sat there, listening to your own breathing struggle to steady itself. You had failed to make it into university, twice. Each time, you had picked yourself up with the quiet conviction that next year would be different. That one more year of sacrifice, one more year of working until your feet ached, one more year of studying beneath flickering lights after everyone else had gone to sleep, would be enough. It never was. Becoming a doctor had never been a passing dream. It had rooted itself inside you long before you understood what medicine truly was. Back when you were still in middle school, when your teacher spoke about futures as though everyone had an equal chance of reaching them, you had believed yours would begin with a white coat. So you studied. You studied between shifts at the cafe.
You borrowed worn-out textbooks from customers who no longer needed them. Sometimes, after schools closed for the day, you wandered past their gates, hoping someone had forgotten a guidebook or a reference manual they could easily replace, but that you could never afford. The first time you slipped one into your bag, your hands had trembled so badly you thought everyone could hear your heartbeat. The guilt stayed with you. So did the book. And every page you turned felt like borrowing a future that had never been meant for you. Sometimes, in your darkest moments, you wondered if those stolen pages had become a debt, one that life had chosen to collect in its own form. Maybe that was why every door seemed to close just as you reached it. Or perhaps, some soils were simply barren, no matter how carefully the seeds were chosen, no matter how faithfully they were watered. Some lives were just not destined to bloom. The scent of fresh jasmine lingered through the grand hallway, sweet enough to soften the air, yet unable to drown out the restless murmur of the guests gathered on either side. Their voices blurred into a single hum, swelling beneath the high ceilings before dissolving into silence again. Your own skin carried the faint fragrance of vanilla and lavender. The wedding gown, more exquisite than anything you had ever imagined yourself wearing, fell over your body like a second skin, its weight unfamiliar despite its effortless grace. To be honest, you had never expected your groom's mother to walk into the cafe that afternoon.
To take your hands in hers and speak softly of a future you had never agreed to spend days taking you from one boutique to another, insisting you choose whichever dress your heart desired, to book luxurious spa appointments, gentle massages, hair treatments you had only ever seen advertised behind polished glass windows. Every kindness, every smile, every wand spent on you. It only made the silence before the unknown feel heavier, as though all of it were preparing you for something you could neither see nor escape. You didn't know what kind of life waited at the end of the aisle you were walking on, only that behind you lay the scattered remains of the one you were born into. Your head remained bowed, swollen eyes hidden beneath careful layers of makeup and a veil. And a few steps behind you walked your father, the sharp scent of expensive cologne failing to hide the lingering trace of alcohol that clung stubbornly to him. Take care of her. The words stumbled from his lips exactly as he had rehearsed them all evening, fearful they might slur together, or worse, that he might forget to say them altogether. The moment your father stepped back, a hand gently enclosed yours. Larger, warmer, steadier. Its grip tightened just enough to still the trembling you had failed to hide. And just like that, the rest of the ceremony drifted past in fragments. Voices, vows, applause. Faces you never truly saw.
And by the time you became aware of your surroundings again, you were standing before your husband's family, bowing politely as introductions dissolved into one another. The absence of the veil, which had been lifted earlier by him, made you feel vulnerable beneath the judgmental eyes. You desperately needed shelter, to hide away. Yet the murmurs around you seemed endless. Your mind was too gone to hold on to the conversations, but one thing kept being repeated in your head: your husband's name, Jungkook. A few minutes later, your mother approached you, greeting her in-laws with practiced warmth before stopping beside you. She leaned close enough for only you to hear. "I'm warning you, Yen." Her smile never faltered. "Don't you dare keep that miserable look on your face in front of Jungkook." Her fingers tightened around your arm until they hurt. "Don't be a whiny bitch. Make sure you keep him happy, satisfied." She leaned in even closer. "If he gets tired of you and sends you back, don't ever think you'll have a home to return to." The words settled inside you like ice. Everything around you grew much more distant. The conversations, the laughter, the congratulations. All of it faded beneath the frantic pounding of your own heart. Your knees weakened beneath you. Perhaps it was the sleepless night, or the grief, or the fear your body had been carrying for weeks without rest. Perhaps it was all of them at once. The moment your legs gave way, an arm caught you firmly around the waist before you could fall. You looked up on instinct and found a pair of dark doe-like eyes peeking into yours. "Are you feeling dizzy?" Jungkook's voice was low and unexpectedly gentle. It slipped through the haze, clouding your thoughts with surprising ease. However, you couldn't bring yourself to utter a response. You simply stared. For the first time, you were looking at your husband, and the first rumor unraveled before your eyes. He wasn't old, not even close. Just like that, on the drive back to his house, a single thought returned again and again, no matter how hard you tried to shoo it away. If the first thing you had been told about Jeon Jungkook had been a lie, how many more had followed it? The moment the engine fell silent, you looked up. Your eyes met Jungkook's for the briefest moment through the mirror, before instinct pulled them back into your lap. He hadn't spoken much. Not during the drive, not during the ceremony, not even after the vows that had tied your lives together. Your heart lurched as he quietly unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out of the car. Wait. You looked down, fingers fumbling with the belt fastened securely across your waist. His mother had buckled it before leaving the venue, and you couldn't care less about the instruction she had delivered then. Your pulse quickened. The clasp wouldn't budge. You tried again, your fingers growing clumsier the more panic settled in. Before desperation could turn into force, the passenger door swung open. Jungkook stood beside it. Without a word, he leaned in, reached for the buckle, and pressed a small button hidden along its side. A quiet click. The pressure around your waist loosened instantly. Heat rushed to your face. You were 21 years old, and this had been the first time you had ever ridden in a car.
Even taxis had always been a luxury reserved for people who could afford convenience over aching feet. You shifted awkwardly, preparing to climb out. Just as you leaned forward, a hand appeared above your head. Jungkook looked away almost immediately, as though worried holding your gaze any longer might make you uncomfortable. Yet his hand remained where it was, shielding the sharp edge of the car door. And only then did you realize you would have struck your head against it. I struggled with it the first time too, he said quietly. This lock is a little different. His voice was soft enough to disappear beneath the night breeze if you weren't already listening. You lowered your eyes. He was lying. You had always known when people lied. But what unsettled you wasn't the lie itself. It was that he told it only to spare you the embarrassment. The thought settled somewhere inside you, unfamiliar enough that you didn't know what to do with it. So you said nothing.
Gathering the heavy folds of your dress, you followed a few careful steps behind him. He never once asked you to hurry, never once slowed dramatically either. He simply walked at a pace that never left you struggling to keep up. The front door opened. A soft click echoed through the quiet house as he stepped inside. However, your feet were stuck at the doorway. The house was beautiful. Warm light spilled across polished wooden floors. Soft shades of cream and muted gold wrapped around the walls, giving the home a quiet warmth that felt almost unreal to someone who had spent years surrounded by damp walls and peeling paint. For one impossible moment, you wondered if houses could really feel this peaceful. Then the sound of the door closing again drew you back. Jungkook had already picked up both of your bags. Out of reflex, you reached for one. "Let me." He glanced at you before giving a small shake of his head. "It's all right. You're tired." You let your hand fall. The feeling that settled inside your chest caught you off guard once again. This time you noticed. There was something serene in his voice. It reminded you of cool water poured over sunburnt skin. Jungkook paused after a few steps. Then a brief hesitation followed. He looked toward you. "Would you feel more comfortable staying in another room?" Your eyes lifted in surprise. The answer escaped before you had time to second-guess it. Yes. You nodded. And he simply nodded back. No questions, no disappointment. Gathering your bags once more, he headed upstairs, and you quietly followed behind. When he opened the bedroom door, you found yourself staring all over again. The room was spacious, without feeling empty. A wide bed sat beneath a large window, soft lamplight warming every corner until the space felt impossibly inviting. You weren't sure you had ever seen such a big room that belonged entirely to one person. After setting your bags inside, Jungkook quietly excused himself. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, you simply stood there. Then, almost hesitantly, walking toward the bed, you let yourself sink into the mattress beneath you. The softness in it so unfamiliar that you gave a tiny bounce without meaning to. Then, slowly you lied down, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. Still wrapped in your wedding dress and the thoughts of the changes happening in your life, slowly, gradually, a deep sleep claimed you. The next morning, Jungkook was brewing his morning coffee when he heard soft footsteps echo down the hallway. He didn't react much, but by the time you reached the kitchen counter, he had already placed another mug beside the kettle, quietly pouring coffee into it before sliding it towards you. He watched your eyes wander around the kitchen before they briefly settled on him. The refrigerator, the polished cabinets, the neatly arranged spice jars. Every little thing seemed to hold your attention a moment longer than it should. It made him wonder just how unfamiliar comfort had been in your life, if even the ordinary could still leave you quietly astonished. But he didn't comment on it. He just let you navigate this new life, at your own pace. Jungkook watched you cradle the warm mug between both hands, taking small, hesitant sips. You looked as though you wanted to say something. He could see it lingering on your lips. But he didn't corner you. Whatever this marriage was going to become, it couldn't begin with expectations. He knew almost nothing about you.
only that you came from a family that had never known abundance, that you were 5 years younger than him, and that according to his mother, you were kind, polite, soft. She had told him that Era, his daughter, needed someone gentle like you. Resigning to fate, he had simply agreed like he had done several times before, without any expectations. Your daughter? He looked up from his coffee. Your voice was barely above a whisper. Where is she? At my mother's, he answered simply. She'll stay there for a couple of days. Your gaze dropped back to your mug. He had begun to notice you did that often. Every time your eyes accidentally met his, they slipped away almost immediately, as though meeting someone's gaze for too long had once come with consequences. He rested his mug against the counter. Can I ask you something? You looked up cautiously. What was your life like before this? You blinked at him. The word caught somewhere in your throat. What exactly was he asking? Didn't he already know? That the luxurious baths, the expensive clothes, the careful makeup, they might have transformed your reflection, yet nothing else felt quite so easy to change. Jungkook noticed the faint color creeping across your cheeks.
Perhaps he'd asked too much, too soon. Thus, he searched for an easier place to begin. I mean, he corrected gently, which university were you studying at? You can't have graduated already. He observed the way your fingers, which had been absent-mindedly tracing the handle of the mug, suddenly stilled. Your eyes drifted from the kettle to the coffee machine, then quietly back to him. I wasn't. The silence that followed lingered just long enough for you to realize he was waiting for you to say more. I never went to university. You swallowed. I failed the entrance exams. Then the last word barely rose above a whisper. Twice. Almost instinctively, you lifted the mug and took another sip of the now bitter coffee, if only to keep yourself from saying anything more. I see. Jungkook's voice remained as even as before. You waited for the faint curl of amusement at the corner of his lips, for the subtle sting hidden beneath a careless remark. None of it came. Instead, he simply asked, which university were you hoping to get into? Seoul Medical College. The name left your lips so quietly it almost disappeared between you. Heat crept across your cheeks. It sounded almost foolish now. The country's most prestigious medical school. The one that had offered a scholarship generous enough to feel like your only way out. For the first time since the wedding, something shifted in Jungkook's expression. Surprise. Seoul Medical College? He repeated the words almost to himself before looking back at you. You want to become a doctor? Wanted to. You lowered your eyes once again. I couldn't clear the exam. The words came out flat. Then you finished the last sip of your coffee before quietly setting the mug back onto the counter. Oh. Jungkook rested his mug in his hands, thoughtful rather than surprised. It usually takes people 4 or 5 attempts to get into Seoul Medical College. He glanced at you briefly. It isn't the kind of entrance exam most people clear on their first few tries. His voice remained as calm as ever, matter of fact, without sympathy, without pity, simply true. You didn't answer. You couldn't. Another minute and you knew the conversation would begin pulling at memories you had worked too hard to bury. So you quietly reached across the counter for his mug. Yen. Your hand stopped halfway. Would you like to try again? Jungkook watched your eyes lift to his, wide, unblinking. For a fleeting second, you looked exactly like a startled rabbit, frozen between fleeing and staying still. Your heartbeat stumbled against your ribs. The next moment, you leaned away immediately, tucking a loose strand of hair slipped across your face in a hurried motion. What? Your voice barely rose above a whisper. What are you saying?
Jungkook held your gaze for a moment before answering. He paused, choosing his words with the same quiet care he seemed to give everything else. If becoming a doctor was really your dream, isn't another year a smaller thing to lose than the rest of your life wondering what might have been? You didn't know what to say. Your mind tried to push it away before your heart could believe it. Yet your feet betrayed you, shifting restlessly beneath the kitchen floor. A nervous energy fluttered through you, making it impossible to stand still. Hope, you realized once again, could make a person just as restless as fear. Jungkook watched you eyes disappear into your thoughts. You didn't even notice him leaning closer until your mug had already been slipped gently from your hands. He turned towards the sink. It's all right if you don't want to. I want to. The words left you before you had the chance to hesitate. He looked back at you. And for the first time since last night,
Yet it softened something in his face that you hadn't realized had been tense until now. And for a fleeting moment, just for a small one, you found yourself wondering what he might look like if he smiled without restraint. Then he turned back towards the sink, rinsing the mugs beneath the running water. We'll go to the bookstore this afternoon. You simply stood there, blinking. Your heart still hadn't settled. You told yourself it was because of the excitement, but it wasn't true. You had always known when people lied.